Welcome to our cross-border conversation, Building Strong Sonic Foundations at Scriptwriting Stage. Thank you to Genelec for supporting this series of talks. The speakers are drawn from the ScreenCraft Works mentoring community.
My name is Claudia Matei del Moro. My pronouns are she, her. I am a production sound mixer based in Germany, originally from Switzerland. And I am a white person with blondish hair.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I am originally from Venezuela, but I am based in Dublin, Ireland. My pronouns are she, her. And I am a sound designer with a focus in sound design and Foley. But I also, in my day job, I work as an audio video producer for an e-learning company. So oversee audio production and post-production, which is really cool to me.
I'm Chantelle. I go by pronouns she, her. I'm based in London, born and raised. By title, I'm an audio assistant for mainly advertising, but freelance, I do sound design, mixing, voiceover records.
Hi, my name is Mariana Vily. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an actor and a screenwriter, and I have curly brownish hair, and I'm wearing a maroon top, I guess.
My name is Lada. I'm a Ukrainian-British writer and director. I'm based in London at the moment, and I mainly work across short films, both narrative and fiction, and I'm a mentee on the cross-border mentoring scheme 2025. And yeah, I'm a white woman with ginger-ish hair.
I started out with sounds when I was bored of being an event manager, it was too much office work, actually, to be honest. And so I I found a sound technician who taught me how to do concerts, live mixing. And then I was interested to go and work in a studio. So I ended up in Hamburg, where there was an opportunity to do so. And this is where I got introduced to film. So because they were doing animation movies, the sound for it. So it was a very good basis to start with doing animation sound.
Well, I think for me, I have a background in music. I studied classical guitar, so when I started my college journey, I thought I was going to be a music composer for films because I've always loved films and the sound. But then I discovered sound design and post-production, and I fell in love, and there was no way back. Like I I just love how you can set the tone and, the mood, and even just change emotions, and people don't even notice really sometimes with sound design.
I'm exactly the same as you. I started off doing music and then fell into sound design just because a friend was like, "Oh, you know sound, it's all the same, right?" And I was like, "Okay, sure." And then yeah, never turned back since. I landed this role. I'm now doing like more adverts, which is really cool. And radio is a one that I didn't think would be so focused on the script, but there is no picture in radio, so you have to make sure the script and that story through the script is coming through with sound. So that's really cool, and really hoping that radio doesn't die so that can kind of stay going because it's really nice.
I think I fell into film kind of by accident. I was always very kind of visual arts focused. I was photographing for a while. I was always painting as a kid. Went to drama school, thought I was going to be an actress. And I think I just always enjoyed making visual things. And then I made an archival documentary about my grandparents, kind of just took a video camera from my godfather and I just filmed it for my family's personal archives. And then I showed it to a friend and she told me to submit it to a few film festivals. And then since then, I've kind of made a few other documentaries and started writing when I was at film school and made my first narrative film, 2 years ago now. And yeah, since then, I've just kind of been sucked in. I've been writing and, working on pitch decks day and night.
I started out acting. I'm a drama school kid, and I started out in the theater. But then I discovered that I really like telling my own stories, and I love how film encompasses all of these different art forms. that you can, tap into to tell a great story. And so that's how I started writing mostly short films.
I love what I do. I love to make these scripts getting filmed and being in the process on set and trying to lay the foundation of sound. I did an apprenticeship in Germany and I changed to a big studio called Studio Hamburg. So I learned all the crafts for filmmaking and I just showed up every week and I told them I want to work for them until they employed me. So I got to know all the equipment and this is how I found my way on to the set. What do you look out for in a script, sonic-wise, audio-wise, if you read a script or write a script? Because I read the script like at least 3 times. First, I read it for the story to understand the characters and the story, and then I read it really thoroughly and take notes and think about and listen what I hear in the story that is like significant for the characters.
I think very similar for me. I look for any specific sound cues as well, any descriptive sentences of atmosphere that can set the tone. I also, Chantelle, you mentioned that you worked with radio, and I was talking to the director that I work with here in Ireland, and she actually mentioned that she's also a script writer. So when she is going through the final passes of the script, she kind of reads it as a radio play to see what stands out to her. And I started doing the same, and things really work for me that way. So, but I say mainly sound cues and anything that can be descriptive to sound. It's what I look for when I first read it.
I think to kind of give like a screenwriter's perspective, I guess, I love to be quite broad and emotive when I write. I don't really like putting sound cues necessarily or music cues. I feel like the beauty of the collaboration between a director and a screenwriter and yeah, a sound designer or a Foley artist or anything is just, it's all about the interpretations and the associations that that person on the other side reading your script has, the associations that the script evokes in their own heads. So I try to I use very broad and very emotive language when I write. I think with dialogue, it really helps to definitely kind of read it back. And for me, it's not always so much about the words that are being said, it's about the rhythmic kind of nature of it, and it's about the beats. And I guess because I used to play drums when I was little, so I don't know if that's linked at all, but I feel like there's so much in the subtext of dialogue in film anyways, and I feel like it is all such a melodic thing. So yeah, I like to look out for that and just be as broad as I can when I write.
Yeah, I think with dialogue, it always takes, the bigger part of the writer's attention. So I try not to be too heavy-handed with the sound cues. I try to add in whatever contributes to building the world or, whatever else you would absolutely need to know from me, such as, I don't know, if an ambulance, heard in the background, then that has to be there. But otherwise, I do try to leave room for the expertise of the other collaborators.
I think when I use sound cues, I might have used the wrong term because I don't mean like bonk sound effects here. No, I mean more of a description of like a scene might look like if you're feeling howling winds in this whatever. I don't necessarily mean what to tell to the. I wouldn't like that either. I think that's too much burden on the script as well, and it takes away from that part, that freedom.
That's what I look for in a script. Like, if it's, I don't know, let's say it's set in a house, you're sitting in a living room, but my brain goes to, okay, well, where are they based? Are they in a rural area? Are they based in the city? What am I going to hear through the window? Am I going to hear an old fridge in the back? And I build it from that. So there might be more questions from me on the script being like, where are you based? What is this? What time of day is it? Like all those kind of things. And that, I think that's how you describe your sound cues, because that's automatically what I thought as well. Yeah, so it's like just taking that like kind of broad scene that you've set in your script, but then we go like far more deeper into like what is there, like 2 rooms in a house? Can I hear a TV through the wall? Yeah, just like you go into such fine detail that most of the time it's never heard and it's so low in the mix, but you know it's there, so it's good.
Yeah, it's the emotional part actually that also catches my eye or ear to think about and talk to the screenwriters or directors. What's the emotion of the character in this part of the story? How maybe put it on a sound level and not and it's also depending on how it's set visually and which part of the emotions are going to be in sound, because sometimes I think it's not so easy to find a good language to talk about sounds and find out to use the right words so we're on the same page. I always take a moment to talk to the director or screenwriter.
Definitely. I think just to kind of jump on that, I feel like that's what I'm trying to do more and more with this new film that I have that I'm working towards now, because I feel like, yeah, in the past, I feel like it was much more about, oh, let's just record the sound and make sure that it's all clean. And then, you add the score, you add your sound effects. And this time, I feel like just because I learned so much in that previous project and I really want to, you know, give sound more of a stage that it deserves. And yeah, I feel like it can be really beautiful, especially tapping into the kind of, the perspective of, is it subjective? Is it objective? Are we in the character's head? Are we hearing it? Is it distorted in some sort of way? Or is it just a setting and it needs to be super realistic, kind of like how dirty, how clean the sound is? I think there's real beauty in there. And I feel like especially watching the new Jonathan Glazer film, it really got me thinking those first few moments where it was just black screen and just sound. And it makes you, it just, yeah, it really reminded me of how important what is not seen but heard is.
So do you think about it when you write?
I feel like it's almost the same for me as editing in a way, because I like to kind of be quite broad when I write, because I feel like, the film is made 3 times, and for me, the editing is when it all really comes together, and I like to not kind of constrict myself so much and let myself be inspired by what happens on the film set, and maybe, that's going to influence how I interpret the location, the characters. But yes, I feel like I've been criticized for being way too descriptive with my scripts. I was trying to be as minimalist as possible. But Mariana, I'd be curious to hear about how you work when you write.
Well, I don't know if it is because I started out as an actor. I mean, when I come up with a story, I typically try to follow like the thoughts of my characters to make sure that dialogue is, backed up by some kind of an inner world. And then I put the most of my effort in making sure that what I'm writing is visual and that I'm painting a world, so to speak, like both in terms of what we would see and yes, what we would hear if relevant. But yeah, I mostly try to think of what kind of a world are we in. So that way, even if I didn't spell out that the sound is happening, that can, suggest something to the director's imagination or the sound mixer's imagination, whoever.
I was on a mini series some years ago, where the director was super specific with cues, but for music, not for sound in this particular way, but for music, because it was and it was amazing. I've never worked like this. She was so specific. I got like a huge Excel sheet where she was cueing all the score music already and the music that was played live, but it was also visually very important and for the film set, but it was mainly on music and not on all other sounds.
I tend to always think of, sometimes when I'm sound designing, I'm just adding what was missed from on set and trying to build it as it would have felt and as it looks to picture. How does it work in your world where you're on set and you're like, okay, well, from a sound side, you need to capture this. At what point do you like chat to the director to say, oh, we should get this? Like, is it just when you're doing a room tone record? How does it work on set?
Well, actually, it starts before. in an ideal world, it only happened to me once, but we did a sound concept. The sound designer and we did sound concept beforehand. Then we pitched it to the director, and we talked about it. And then COVID hit, and I didn't actually do the film. But anyways, this is very nice. I would love to go again and really do the set production sound then. But I really try to imagine and talk to the directors or screenwriters if they come on set, or if they are the same person. Things like that might be key moments, or to understand how it's probably going to be cut, which is, of course, in the editing room, a lot of things are going to change. But if to try to cover these emotions, sometimes it's, of course, we have the standard things like special cars and ambient sounds and stuff. I have to, like, technically, because you need this. But then I also like to play around with a lot of plant mics. So say somebody is going out of the room, I place, and if the set is according to the story we are telling, then I really try to put the plant mic outside again and let them walk longer than they have to just for the picture, because they tend to cut them very quickly. But I love to provide some extra steps or let them go up and down some stairs and things like this. Or when we shoot in a very loud, like I shot the film in Istanbul, and the window was open and it was a very lively area. So I put the microphone outside and just record constantly, or at least every time we make a take, with the hope that you in the sound design post-production can use this somehow.
I love when I get rushes and there's just so much more sound, because it's what happened there. You're getting everyone's emotions. Like sometimes I was working on a short film today actually, and the guy has no lines on his lav, but you can hear him just like breathing and panting because he's still in action. He's still being filmed, but it's those subtle little things that I can add that is his voice. I don't have to get him to ADR it. I don't have to try and dub it myself or like get someone to do it just randomly. I can take his actual emotions that he felt that matches the take that was used. It just makes it blend even nicer.
Yeah, that's a very, very strong point, to have all the breathing, or I mean, now we go more into sound design, but if it's in the script, it's also like, yeah, this enhances the emotion of the character, the story they go through. Often on set, people tell me, yeah, we don't have to mic them up because they're not talking, but there is sound always. And it's not just the dialogue, and so many sounds are telling the feelings and emotions they go through much more than the dialogue. Or I personally like films with less dialogue, actually.
Question popped up in my head for Lada and Mariana, because I'm kind of curious, because you both have a similar vision of not being very specific with certain sounds and stuff in the script. So I kind of wanted to, because in my experience, I also have worked with people that give me mood boards with sound references. And I was just kind of curious to know if that's something that you guys work with and if you think that is beneficial, because I also agree so much, Lada, you said something that in the edit everything kind of comes together, and it's the same, like the sonic identity of a film kind of also it's found in the edit, but I think it's important to have an initial mood board. So I'm just kind of curious to see if you guys use it, if you see the benefit of it as well.
I definitely had kind of references, and I struggled to do a mood board per se because obviously it's all sonic. But yeah, I tried to kind of give as many adjectives as possible and describe it in some sort of way that make sense in my head with some references. I like to in general use a lot of references that are not necessarily just films and are kind of, I don't know, art, sculpture, other things, because I feel like that can get your brain thinking in a very interesting way. I always kind of tend to be very drawn to people that work a lot with like field recordings and kind of found sound, especially when it comes to score. I'm less kind of fond of the more, I don't know, classical instrumental scores, and I like it to be much more ambient. So I feel like it's a combination of looking at what the person has done before, kind of where their interests stand. Because I remember for the previous film that I did, I was talking to a few different sound designers and composers, and then I kind of gave all of them the same brief, and then they gave me 3 completely different, tracks, and then I plugged them in, and it looked like it was 3 completely different films, although the footage was the same. So yeah, I feel like there's a certain beauty in that kind of trial and error and seeing what works, what doesn't. And sometimes it's the things that you never thought might work, and then you plug them in with a picture, and then suddenly it all makes sense.
I haven't really ever made, like a soundscape, reference library, but I'm glad to hear that it could be helpful. Like it's one more thing I could have as a tool. Sometimes, the world of the story I'm telling is already so specific. Like I'm thinking of a short film that I wrote where there was a scene in a ballet studio, the characters were dancers. So the director very naturally suggested using scores from ballet for the music because, it was sort of implied in the world. And also, like I had some counts because we were showing a rehearsal, and so some of those sounds that are organic to the world came to be part of the scene. But I'm looking to think about it more. I think I'm excited to try some new things in that regard. I'm also like Lada in that I prefer ambience sound to like a very score heavy film is what I meant. And I think one thing that is super interesting to me as an audience member and that I would like to write more is when the audience knows that there's supposed to be sound but they can't hear it. Such as, if somebody screams silently or if they play music but we don't know what they're playing.
In my experience, I think also, I've benefited a lot. I've been working with the same director here for a couple of projects, and as I said, like she also very knows exactly what she wants, but she's also very open and appreciative of any idea that the sound department will has. But also the use of references are in the sense of like, if there is a film or a scene in a film that you feel like it would match the mood that you're looking for, it's something that is always appreciative. And sometimes it comes from the sound department as well. Like when we're having these conversations with the directors or writers, it kind of comes as in like, oh, do you mean something like this? I think that's super. Having a conversation about this in pre-production is super important, at least to me, to have that initial idea, and then of course everything explodes after.
I actually have a question for Natalie, Claudia, and Chantelle. Are there any things that kind of really excite you when you get approached with a project, and any sound, I don't know, brief or something that is like you're kind of, oh yeah, I want to be involved in this?
I haven't had the opportunity, but I'm waiting impatiently to get like a thriller or a horror, because I do love, that's my favorite genre of film that I enjoy to watch, and I would love to work on it. But also it's the opportunity to create sounds. Sometimes they're not even on the brief, like, this is a perfect conversation, I guess, to bring it up. But I worked on a film where we didn't know we needed a transition sound until we were working on it, and it was, something that's supposed to be, it wasn't supposed to be creepy, but it was supposed to make you feel some kind of tension and kind of weary about the character. And that kind of, it's just those kind of moments that you see this could work here and it's not even identified. I think that also excites me, which it's a little bit of a contradiction of what has been said before, but it's also appreciated, I think, in my point.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I really am excited if when there are scripts where or directors and screenwriters they go with less music. They already know. I mean, I love music, and I actually ended up doing many films with a lot of music, which is also a big challenge to do so. And it's very important on this side to make sure you have the rights for the music and have them clear before we shoot, so we can really use the music that is going to end up, or at least have a scratch from the composer, so we can work with this music. It helps so much because then you don't have to get used to other music, and it's strange to have not your music you love. But then it's also, yeah, if to have figures, they have strong emotions and they go through strange stories and maybe locations. So then I can go and record some extra sounds and run around in strange places and try to give food to the sound designers and composers. Do we say this in English? I don't know. How about you, Chantelle?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same as you guys. I just like when the ones that came to my mind were like radio, because you are just building it with no visual at all. So you do have to get really creative. We did a British Gas Olympics ad actually, and they were set on having the sound of a vacuum sucking up a coin, and like winning the race. But we couldn't break our vacuums, so we had to try and recreate it. So it was like we were like in the studio, in the booth, just like cupping our hands around cups, rattling coins and like metal things in tins. And then yeah, through the power of plugins and a little bit of mixing, we made it work. But they were set on having that sound to build what they've written in their script of like this transition in like a marathon style. But there was no visual cues because it's radio, so you just had to make it work. So I mean, it was written great. So our juices were flowing straight away. We were like, yeah, we can record this and we can do that. So yeah, those are really exciting projects because they're written so well that we instantly hear what they're trying to say through words, and then we can just go do our creative stuff, and then hopefully they're all happy.
So do you find the scripts for the radio plays are written much differently?
Yeah, most times. I mean, most times you're just getting 30 seconds, max, most times 60 seconds. So they're they're not written per se better, but they know what they're gonna say in their VO. So that's they're selling a product or they're telling you about an event. So that's very clear of what the message they're trying to get. But you don't really want to listen to an ad where it's just talking because that's a bit boring. So you have to build the scene behind it. We've did a Ford radio ad in the past, and they're trying to sell their new van. And you're trying to sell the idea that they're construction workers. The van can fit all these tools. So you're trying to make it loud and busy. And but then it's also an electric van, so you don't want it to be this old tin can van sound as it drives off. You want it to be something smooth. So it's all those small little things, and sometimes we are lucky where we can get a picture of what they're trying to sell, so we understand what they're trying to say through sound. But when we see what they're trying to sell, it's very easy to try and just fill those little gaps because you don't want to overtake the VO either. And the dialogue there is really important because that's how they're really selling the product. But it's the little fillers that we can just fill in that they've allowed in their script for us. So let's just say it's 60 seconds, but every 10 seconds we can get 2 seconds of sound to build that soundscape. They've written it into the script, so it gives us that time to play with. So sometimes the script will just say, like, I don't know, in brackets, like power tool. And then we can go and just find anything that kind of works. But it's broad enough that we can make it our own, but it's specific enough that we know what they're after.
In the same spirit as Lada's question, I would like to know from you, Chantelle and Natalie and Claudia, if there's anything that I could write in the script that would be so problematic to mix or like so difficult to edit or to record, like would be a total nightmare. I don't know, like if there's something that has to be like best avoided.
Somebody told me recently there was a scene where two characters were under a shower and talking to each other. It's very hard to do this because you see the water and you can, yeah. I thought, well, yeah, that's tricky.
Yeah. I was also thinking about where there is a dialogue heavy scene and there is a lot of things going on in the background. You just have to be prepared that that scene's going to be ADR and everything's going to be redone in post, because nothing that you capture on the day is going to be like, or like very little of it can be used then in the end. I had a scene not so long ago that I was in the beach. It was beautiful, but they were on the pebbles and they were opening like a box with a bag while they were talking, and I was like, okay, this is gonna be hard. And there was no option to ADR either, so it was the task of just going through so many takes to kind of find the one that matches, and that took me, I'm gonna say, half a day, if not the full day, just trying to match everything. So yeah, just be mindful of, I think, those.
Yeah, I completely agree. You made me you reminded me of one that I did where they were filming at the beach, and it was an intense scene, but they weren't shouting. So the lav can only do so much. So I had to, I don't even know how I managed to do it, but I used AI to remove the actual waves from the sea to then just add in a fake sea. But same as you, it took me a good half a day. They didn't have many takes either, so it was just make do with what I had. I think sometimes, yeah, when you guys are writing scripts, just be prepared that we aren't fully magicians. So some scenes might not work. But yeah, we can only do our best. But you guys are writing and you're writing what you're seeing. And if you're not from the sound idea, like that's where I think collaborating as soon as you can with sound or with camera or whoever, because you're making sure your story is told exactly how you want it. And we can only work with what we get. And sometimes, well, post sound is very much an afterthought. So yeah, the sooner you can connect with people, the better, and the better your films will be.
Yeah, and then I wouldn't restrict yourself to not write anything because I love a challenge always. I've done many scenes with music in the background, like a lot of people, live music, so it works. We can mute them all. I can put them in ears. I mean, of course, if we have the budget. But if the budget is there, we can do a lot, even with this, with live music playing in the background and a lot of people jumping around and having a party or whatnot, which sometimes leads to the decision to go for the wide shots and play it loud. So we know that if you're going to start the scene in the wide shot and they already start talking, you might take the lyrics from the dialogue from the close-up scenes or go ADR. But it, from my feeling, most of the time it feels much more natural if the audience and the extras really hear the sound.
I definitely agree with that as well, Claudia. And like, write everything and anything you want. Just, I think, having those conversations with your audio person, be in your location or your post, preferably both, so you are aware of what are like the things that could go wrong. So you have a plan B as well, like would be ADR. Sometimes people don't really, especially if you're new in the industries, that sometimes is forgotten that can be done, and sometimes it's done but not with the greatest equipment, so you end up not being able to use it anyway. So it's just having those early conversations, all your ideas, and it's super helpful for us as well.
Yeah, completely. I feel like no idea is too big or too small because we don't know we can do it until we do it. And we can't be creative as a whole industry and as a collective and as individuals if someone's not pushing that boundary. So like we only get better if everyone is trying to do new things. So like why not try? And if it doesn't work, at least you tried.
I had a little question actually, that popped to my mind as you were all talking. I remember I was working, well, actually not me, my boyfriend was working on a film with the sound designer, and I was quite also involved in the project. And I remember one day he told me that they were kind of going at it for so long that the sound became so clean to the point that it felt fake. And to the point where you're listening to it and you know that it's been kind of, artificially created and you're very conscious of it being a film. So I guess my question is, when do you know when to just stop? Like, when do you know when the scene or the film is done and there's no more work, there's no more tweaking that needs to be done?
For me, I just love it when I'm told it has to be done by this date. It's the easiest way because I can just work backwards and say, okay, well, in a week's time, I need to have my dialogue cleaned up. Okay, and in 2 weeks' time, I need to have all my atmospheres in. And then when we get, I'll say, okay, in a month's time, I have to send you a whip. I have to send you just a review. See what your thoughts are, if you want to add, remove, whatever. And I'll do that roughly 3-4 times, depending on how long the project is. But then I know there's an end date in mind and it has to be done. So wherever we get to it. But it'll be my best work, but I know in my head how I can make it work to get the best result for that timeline.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I also had I've had situations where I have overworked the audio where you hear and you're like, "Oh my God," why did I do this? But I think that's just because you spent so long for so many hours as well on one specific thing that will, in my experience, that's what happens to me when I spend so much time on one thing, then it starts sounding overdone. So what I do is I kind of just take breaks and stop and come back to it with fresher ears, because that's what you need at the end, so you can hear what you're not doing or overdoing. That's what worked for me. And sometimes also, if you have the chance to share what you're doing with a colleague, just to get their perspective, is also super helpful. But yeah, timelines and deadlines, I'm all for those, so I can organize myself and I know exactly how long it will take me to do something, only something is not quite there.
That's why when I am happy to be on set. Of course, sometimes I struggle with some costumes or things or locations. But then I always wonder how it's gonna end up, and I would love to have more conversation between post-production and set sound, and I mean, ideally it would be great to come together in pre-production already. It's really a big wish of mine to work like this.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the best thing. The best case scenario is everybody joins heads in pre-production. The idea is your idea is clear, but not overly specific, obviously, for sound, but it's just so we know the mood, the tone, and what you're looking for. And also, it for me, like I said, references are a big thing for me. Not necessarily can work for everybody, but I would go away and kind of go like, oh, this kind of reminds me of this might work. So I would go back and, you know, having a conversation in pre-production, having an open, flexible as well, somewhat conversation. It's trust your sound people as well, you know.
The pre-production chat would have been so grateful for some stuff we've done, like a YouTube video, and they're promoting their new clothes and stuff, but they wanted it to be like very laid, relaxed. And she was like in a kitchen, but it's like they didn't think on set, oh, this generator's going on. That's gonna be a problem. So we got all the rushes with generator sounds in the back, which we could work around, like we lowered it and stuff. We was able to level it enough. But then the director got so used to hearing so much noise in the offline edit. So when we've come to reduce stuff, there's now a whole talk of like sibilance and like this is too much. And now she sounds like she has a lisp, which is not the case, but there's only so much you can do in reducing sounds. But that whole pre-production plan, we could have said, oh, maybe let's not use a kitchen, maybe let's like do it further away from where you're sat. But all those little chats is just so useful. But
well,
yeah,
kitchens.
Yeah.
Sorry. Kitchens are a big thing. I mean, you can always shoot in kitchens, and but yeah, you should listen to the and go. This is also in pre-production. Being able to go there and for the tech recce and check and make sure we can turn off the fridge or whatever freezers, or if you are in a bar, there are more cooling stuff in the background and whatever. So I always try to shut off as much as possible, but make sure you make them turn back on again. I had one incident where the production company had to pay for some kilos of meat that weren't good anymore after because we forgot to turn the fridge back on. So yeah, but it was better for the sound recording. But sometimes there are machines and it's very important to shut them off, because you shut one off and then you hear another one. So yeah. And it's always a good idea to just put your car keys into the fridge. So at least when you want to drive away, you remember to turn it back on.
My clip I'm going to show you guys it's about 1.5 minutes long. It's a trailer of a documentary we did for this musician called Hack Baker, and it's basically the whole documentary is his journey, and there wasn't an edit in mind, there wasn't a script written in mind. It was just his friends filming him in his journey from student to Glastonbury headliner act.
This is the hope of England, a lyricist, musician, absolute quality poet.
I'm a destroyer, deep down. We didn't receive that care that we wanted. I've still got to get over every day telling myself I don't deserve anything.
And it kills me that I can't heal him, protecting like he used to do for me. And when I was outside, dodgy dealing, he took them round.
They come on the wing and they said, if you want guitar lessons, put your name down. They did a rap form. My name was pulled out of the hat. You have to drive yourself.
Bit on the mushrooms, I'm intense.
It gives you more freedom than driving up and down in the country, fucking going to pubs singing. There's nothing more liberating than that, bro.
I wanted to show that one mainly because in the beginning there was no script. It was just whatever videos they had, but you can't just make a documentary being like, here's clip 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So we had to work backwards, and it was a collaboration between the artist himself, Hakeem, and his team, his management, his publicist, all those kind of people. And as a collective, we built a script from the stuff they had, and it was kind of nice to work backwards in a way, because we're saying, oh, that clip, we can't really restore the quality any better than what we've got. Like, are you happy for it to be kind of low? And they could choose what they wanted to show and what they didn't from what we said would work and what, the colorist said would work and the editor and stuff like that. So it was a nice collaboration that way, that we all collectively built a script for it to work. And then we added on the voiceover to make sure it flowed a bit better than what it was. So yeah, it was a really nice, like, just team project.
It looks great. I love especially the photo stuff and like the clicks, and I feel like it gives it very nice pacing. And I love archival documentaries, so that I'm gonna check it out after this talk for sure.
Nice one.
And did there a lot of sound come with the small videos they had archive stuff?
Yeah, so all they really had was just like a digital camera, and some of it was, like really old, like proper, like handheld, like from like early 2000s. So the quality wasn't the best. But they were quite happy to like have it look archival, which was great. But there's like one particular scene, you kind of briefly saw it, where he's playing guitar. He's in a jail cell in that scene, but it was like redone, obviously. But he plays his song that he'd written in jail, but he plays it slightly slower than his recorded track. But that one, the story was to tell it as him going from writing it in his cell to then playing it on Glastonbury. And it was kind of that we wanted to tell that story, but how did we do it? How could we speed it up? Would we make a change? How do we do the merge? So it was a nice blend, and it was like, okay, well, if you make your edit minus 3 frames, this will match up perfectly with his finger, so it's not a weird cut. It was a nice way to blend everyone, because that was what they wanted to get across. That was they were very much like, we want this scene to work. How do we make it work? And so everyone got together to make it work.
Yes,
It's a
please.
small proof of concept film that we did for a script where I'm a co-writer, and it features an artificial womb. So my co-writer and I discussed what kinds of sounds and what that kind of machine would look like. And well, here's a proof of concept version of that.
Hi, Sammy. It's your mom. I just wanted to tell you that I love you and you're amazing. And I just can't wait to meet you, baby. Sometimes I just sit here next to you and it feels like you're with me. And I talk to you and I read to you. And I would probably sleep right here if I could. I love you, baby. I hope everything is perfect in there.
Scene where the mother, who's the woman talking, is talking to the artificial womb, since the pregnancy is not inside of her. This is a proof of concept for a longer short film that tells the story of a pregnancy that needs to become externalized because it's not safe for the mother to continue with it, and so the baby is now inside of this machine, and so that's kind of what we saw in the clip we just saw, where the mom has all of these emotions because like it's I don't know, it's strange to not have the feelings of the pregnancy. So that's what that scene was about.
I think if you really know the point of view of your character, that's also super important. Apocalypse Now always comes to mind about that. Okay, it wasn't written in the script, but there were certain things like characters on his back looking at the fan going around, and then that triggers the memory of the helicopters. So it's, if you have all those emotions in your script, it's great for us. And also, as we said many times, please have more conversations in pre-production with your sound team, because it's awesome to just know about the film from the start.
Moving forwards, and especially with this new film that I work on, I would love to explore the idea of kind of using soundscapes as inspiration. And I'm pretty sure it was Claudia, you that said that about kind of you working on like a sound concept to present to the director, so the conversation kind of starts way ahead of getting the footage and seeing the rushes and everything. And I think that will be really great. I guess just kind of as a hot tip, just not being afraid to let the inspirations, the references change as you go along and as you hear the input from the other creatives, and yeah, just letting it be a kind of a very natural, very fluid creative process.
I'm also taking on the idea of creating a soundscape. And I would say, yeah, definitely, while keeping in mind, the needs of the other departments, don't let that constrict you. And if anything, know that you can just lean onto the expertise of the team so that you can bring whatever idea you have into life.
Films are very dialogue based, and I would always like to encourage writers to write script and let them express their feelings and what they go through with less dialogue.
I was gonna just say, like, nothing is silent, right? So as much as you can write into your script, we can bring a sound for it. So the more you give us, the more we can work with and the better it will be.
Thank you to all our speakers for this fascinating talk.